Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I apologize for that. Welcome. You're outnumbering us this morning. Good morning. My name is Brian Moffitt, and I'd like to welcome you to the meeting of the Asheville Downtown Commission for September 22nd, 2023. The Asheville Downtown Commission was created by the City Council for the sustainability and continued development of downtown, a vital urban center of Western North Carolina's economic, cultural, and visitor activity. The Downtown Commission provides City Council with recommendations on downtown policies and initiatives. In addition, Downtown Commissioners currently fill 3 out of 9 seats of the city's Design Review Committee, which reviews development projects within the Central Business District, the River Arts District, and hotel projects outside of those areas. The Downtown Commission also has the opportunity to provide input on projects outside of the scope of Design Review. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website, also linked on the committee page and also available on YouTube. For those of you out there with us today, welcome, and welcome to everyone who is here in person. At this time, I will go through and do roll call for the few of us that are here. I apologize for not having quorum this morning. So, committee members, so Nora Edwards is not here. Andrew? Thank you. Jessica Hendricks? Stephen Lee is not here. I am here. Ricardo and Robin are not here. Megan? Good morning. Eva Michelle is not here. And our council representative, Sage? Good morning. Thank you. So we have a few items on the agenda this morning. We can't go through the approval of minutes because we don't have a quorum, so we'll do that next time if I can remember to keep it on the agenda. So we'll do public comment right now. I will also note that we have put for the college patent bike lane updates presentation, we will have a opportunity for public comment on that item specifically after transportation staff gives their presentation. So if you're here to speak to that item specifically, I would just please ask that you wait for public comment for that portion. If you have public comment on any other items on the agenda, you can make that now.
I have an item, but I don't think it's about safety downtown.
Then come right on up. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Just please state your name.
My name is Sheila Surratt. I'm a downtown Asheville native resident. And before I begin, I was here first, so I'm not going anywhere. That church I've been telling you about, the ministry, it needs security. Somebody OD'd in the bathroom on Wednesday morning, and they always OD there. They go to that church, they meet up with their friends, and they get their fix, and they do their drugs there on site, and they OD. They do that almost daily. There are tents set up at that ministry as we speak. If you go down next to the interstate, there are tents and carts all over the place. Okay? So, we need more funding for downtown. We need more funding for security. My friend sent me this last night. We are at Strata right now, parked in the parking garage, across from the vault, attempting to walk down the stairs, and some drug-crazed woman was all over the floor of the landing. So we had to go out a different way, and then druggies all over when we walked out. This place is a real shithole. Okay, so we have no one patrolling downtown late at night. So 2 weeks ago, a dead body was in front of Woolworths, and guess what? The dead body, the man was robbed while he was dead. I saw the video. It's very disturbing. We've got the Rankin parking garage. That's their second home. If they don't hang out at the ministry or A-Hope, they're in that Rankin parking garage. That parking garage is dangerous. Go in there, walk it right now. I guarantee you, you're not going to like what you see. We need more protection. We need more money. We need more funding for police so we can have them on the streets late at night. That dead body laid there for 6 hours from 1 o'clock until 7:45 in the morning before somebody realized that was a dead body. And I've got a lot more I can say, but for now, I'm speaking on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items for public comment? Yes, sir. Please come on. Again, just state your name into the microphone. I'm sorry.
My name is Joe Eckert. I'm
yes, thank you.
the owner of Laughing Seat in Jack of the Wood. I want to echo what we've just heard because we face that situation every morning on Wall Street. My staff barely can come to work sometimes with people sleeping on the patio there. We find orange caps and needles in the planters. Then across the street in the parking, where the parking garage is, was a hangout until about a week ago. The police did a pretty thorough cleanup of that area. And just their presence makes a difference. Because if nobody is just tourists or customers on Wall Street, they're just going to hang there, especially at the parking garage. So I just want to bring it to everyone's attention that it's become a serious thing. It's affecting my staff, whether they want to come to work there or want to work somewhere else. It's pretty serious. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items for public comment? All right.
Is it inappropriate for me to say something real quick?
No, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Sorry, we don't normally respond to public comment, but I just wanted to share a little bit. Thank you for the additional information. I was talking with Joe just before the meeting. There is awareness on council that there's an ongoing issue and growing problem. And just yesterday at our agenda briefing, we were talking about it a little bit. And I know I've been meeting with businesses for the last several weeks and hearing lots of this input and trying to gather information and ideas and solutions and then bring them to council and the city manager. So all that to say, I recognize there's a problem. I appreciate continuing to hear the input, and I think it's really time that we do more. And I'm hopeful that some things will be done. Not clear quite on how much we'll be able to do and how quickly, but just know that we are talking about it and working on something, and I expect that there will be more to announce soon.
Thank you. Okay, we will move into our first item of business, which is the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium update presentation. You're up.
This one?
There you go. Whoa.
Cool. Okay. Good morning, y'all. I'm Chris Correll, General Manager over at the Harris Cherokee Center, Asheville, which includes the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium. Hopefully a lot of this you've read in the newspapers, so you have a pretty good idea on, and I'll give you a little bit more of an update on where we are in addition to what you've seen in the newspaper. There we go. All right. So just to give you a timeline of where we are, how we got here, in May of 23, we held a Asheville Symphony event with Bella Fleck that had our initial failure of like our main unit, if you will. There's 3 units that take care of the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium. We had some water coming down on patrons, which is what made us go up in the attic to take a look about what was going on. Found some issues there. We put a risk mitigation plan in effect, moved forward with events through June with that 1 unit offline using 2 other units. Went through, I think it was like 19 different events in June. No issues, just other than trying to keep up with the system while we worked on parts. Then on July 3rd, we hosted a sold-out show with a band called The Smile, which is 2 members of the Radiohead band. That show was completely sold out. It was like 88 degrees outside. It was like the perfect storm of bad weather to have when you'd have no air conditioning. We worked with the band in advance, put up a risk mitigation plan again in that one. Free water, free paddle fans, extra medical staff, all the things just to be prepared for it. During that show, the additional 2 units in the theater that were trying to overcompensate both separately failed at different times during the show, leaving us at about an hour before the show ended with no functional air conditioning anywhere in the building except for the green room, which then resulted in temperatures a little bit over 88 degrees and humidity inside the room at about 79%. So it was hot, steamy, and a little bit unbearable in there. Luckily, we walked out with no medical issues. I think the free water and paddle fans and just people roaming through the crowd, handing out water, helped solve that. So then we took the day off on July 4th, and July 5th, we temporarily closed the room and started shutting down events and actively moving them into our arena throughout the fall. Then we got into August, and we initiated what we're calling the quick fix repair, with the goal of being open later this fall. That should be about 2, maybe 3 weeks away at a reduced capacity. So that quick fix, it's what I'm calling an octopusing of the system. So we have those 3 units. The biggest one in the middle, which is the most important one, has the longest lead time for repairs. We're looking at like 6 to 9 months for that one. So we're fixing the two on either end that we can access without building a catwalk and some other things, marrying all the ductwork together and using those two units to send air out through the room for all those. So that'll get us somewhere around 1,300 capacity, which is important. It's not going to allow us to do ticketed events, but what it does allow us to do is all the non-ticketed events that we host, we get to keep them, and for the ones that wanted to move into the arena, it keeps them out of the arena, which is vital so that we can still book the arena with the bigger events that have the bigger impact on downtown and our budget. So moving forward into October, we should be complete with that quick fix. We're anticipating an ask to council to utilize some of our enterprise fund balance to repair to get to full capacity, which should have us open sometime in the spring, like February, March, with a target to reopen at full capacity sometime February, March, and then move forward with shows. We're waiting to start booking shows post-March, though, until we have a really solid timeline. So that might actually result in open in May, for example, even though we're ready in March. Fiscal impact, we're estimating a reduction of gross operating revenue around $1.2 million for this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year in our enterprise budget. And then we're estimating a reduction of our annual economic impact to Asheville-Buncombe County at around $20 million. That number could be worse. Luckily, we're saving a good number of our shows and putting them in the arena throughout the fall, so we're still having the shows, just a little bit different setup. We had one on Tuesday this week, actually, with Nick Cave that went pretty well. So our next steps, like I mentioned, we're gonna do a work session on Tuesday next week with council, specifically about the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium. We anticipate as we get out of that work session into the next business meeting in October that we'll be requesting funds from our enterprise fund balance for emergency repairs. And we're going to ask for approval to request that we go to the TDA's LIFT process, which is a new grant project process that the TDA has that can help us towards maintenance and repairs of capital assets that have ties to tourism and design for future projects. So renovation options, we had a town hall over at the arena with Asheville Arts Council that they hosted and asked us to put a menu of different style options out on the table just so the community could know what's available at the Thomas Wolfe. So I'll go through those real quick just so you have an idea of what those are. It's a really well-studied situation here. So over the last 20 years, there's been 9 different conceptual design studies or ancillary operational evaluations. They all have really similar results. Infrastructure, life safety is key, rigging is lacking, loading is a disaster, back of house needs some work, acoustics, lighting, audio needs enhancements. And then on the public side, bathrooms aren't adequate, seats are old, patron flow is poor, food and beverage capabilities are really challenging. And the biggest consistency is that every study, all those coming with same results of what we need, is that the price keeps increasing because we get longer and longer into time. So the most well-evaluated of all of these projects is the major renovations / Broadway expansions. This was a project that we released in like January 20th of 2020, a month and a half before the world shut down. So this was a really well-vetted conceptual design that added some Broadway capability, was basically everything the symphony would ever want, had the ability for us to have ancillary space, new public space, touring capabilities, a lot of really great things. That project at that time was estimated at $100 million, and so you can see just looking in 2028 dollars, it's almost double in that 8-year period. That project back in like 2012, I believe it was like a $45 million project, so they keep climbing. And just for clarity, to make it not such a scary number, 198 million sounds bad, but 14 million over 20 years sounds less bad. So that's how that would be in a debt service structure. And then scaling to a different style setup, an acoustically driven setup is somewhere around 150 million or less at $11 million a year over 20 years. This would be like a concert hall type of room, if you will. An improved rake force that would not change the arrangement of Thomas Wolfe. The one prior would bring the balcony forward a little bit and kind of change how the structure is of the building, keeping similar capacities.
Would that one address the height of the fly?
Only the first one addresses the height of the fly.
Oh. Yeah. So this doesn't change the kind of shows we can have?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
The The improved rake foil arrangement, about $9 million a year for 20 years, is the same structure that we have, new seats, but using the same structure and some front and back of house improvements. Multi-purpose flat floor, this is kind of like your Fillmore style house where we'd flatten the floor, going back to what its original was, which was a flat floor and keeping a balcony. This setup has not been vetted in any way, shape, or form other than our design team gave us a quick number on it a month ago to give us an idea. That'd be around $8 million a year for 20 years. Just infrastructure and code upgrades, around $52 million. That'd be a $4 million a year for 20 years in a debt service structure. That really changes very little other than HVAC, electrical, plumbing, paint fixtures, the basics.
ADA, accessibility with
Yes, some ADA in that too.
Isn't that what are we hearing more and more about a flat floor request?
Potentially, yes. Oh, that was weird. All right, so then the do-nothing option is always an option. So there's no project cost to that one, but the ongoing costs could be significant. It's unknown. I mentioned in our tours at the Arts Council meeting, we spend between like $15,000 and $25,000 a year on plumbing repairs in the Wolf alone. So there are costs to do nothing, but the costs are much, much less and obviously can be absorbed in operation as we have done that for years. So moving forward, keys here, any renovation is a major renovation, even if it's just code upgrades. We're talking a project that's more expensive than the baseball project that we'll talk about in a minute. What does the room want to be? What does Asheville want the room to be? I can tell you from 2020, we did a ton of public engagement, and that's how we got to the $100 million project. So I can tell you I know what Asheville wants the room to be, but what's a realistic budget for this type of project in the community? And that's really what we should figure out and then design the best, most functional room to that, if that's what we're gonna do going forward with the project. And so in that council work session on the 26th, things that we'll try to explore with council is really just like, what's the appetite for a full capacity repair? That's that one that I mentioned, be a little bit over $1 million just to get us back open this spring at full capacity. What's an appetite for a renovation and to what scale, if so? We'll explore a couple different financing strategies of how other communities have done renovations or new builds of centers like this. And then we'll try to get some direction towards a concept or two to kind of drive down the road towards and see what we're up to. And I'm sure other things will come up as council's good at doing. Questions?
I just noticed your economic impact numbers
Yes.
on this, which I think is the big number that affects all the smaller players in town that are sort of orbiting the big events that happen at Thomas Wolfe. What is the economic impact of Thomas Wolfe alone? Do you have that number isolated?
Yeah.
As far as separate from the Harris Center?
So the complex as a whole is about $79.6 million a year. The Thomas Wolfe alone is like 30.7, I want to say. And then with the event, removing the events that we can't save and keep, that's where we got down to the 20.5 million.
Okay, that was my curiosity. So I looked up, so I mean, these big numbers are kind of hard to understand without context.
Yep.
But so some context is that McCormick Field was slated as having $9.8 million annual impact. And you saw the commitment to retain that economic impact from the city. So I'm hoping that we get a similar scaled commitment from our city, judging on the overall impact of Thomas Wolfe.
Sounds great.
Do the various options, we see what the room would look like, the front facing. Do they have different back of house steps
Yeah.
in each of those?
The big Broadway one has an expansion out of the back of house. All the other ones keep the fly house in the same configuration. To be fair though, all of these, including the big Broadway one, there was a parameter that the Duke substation could never move and would never move, which is obviously now in play and could and will and is going to. So when we go back to the design team, if we move forward with a direction, we can take that parameter out because that would be city land at that point, and that might change dollars, functionality. So in those lower scale models of non-Broadway house, we might be able to increase community space, a black box theater, rehearsal space. There's other options that could come in there, but again, money, right?
Megan?
Sorry, that's a revenue stream.
Yeah, the top three would have improvements in the restrooms and the food and beverage. The top one, the Broadway room would have the biggest impact because it's moving the last seat would move forward, I think it was like 50-some feet, so you're gaining a whole lot of like lobby, restroom, food service space. Same with the second one, the acoustically driven, and then once you get to where the footprint stays the same, your lobby and restroom space really stays the same as what it is now. Yeah.
What about loading? Was that?
Loading's addressed in like the best way possible in that Broadway sense, where we were actually bringing the stage to loading instead of loading to the stage. So that was dropping it down like 20-some feet. All the others would keep loading very similar, or we'd have to figure out a lift situation or a long ramp. But again, with the substation potentially moving, we could change loading, keep the stage where it is, and just have a long ramp push to get there, just because we have a bigger space to get to grade. Greensboro Coliseum has like a 350-yard push to get to their stage area, so it's not out of the question to have a long push up a ramp to get to the right grade.
Having worked, my office is not working on anything in this currently, but we did work on the original Performance Center stuff, and we worked on other performance centers. And I'll say that the fly is the big deal. So without a fly, you're really limited on the kind of shows you can bring. And there's not really another, Broadway capable venue within an hour, hour and a half. Maybe Raven Gap. There's a couple others like that have a Broadway-sized fly that you can get to, but you have to be in driving distance. So that would honestly be a pretty big game changer, and we've seen wildly different economic impacts on what that would mean to come to the area. But I would strongly suggest council look very, very carefully at doing something that does not bring the Thomas Wolfe into what it would need to be to provide a Broadway show.
Does not.
I think we need to provide Broadway shows.
So I would note Broadway, so there's Broadway in Greenville, Broadway in Knoxville, Broadway in Greensboro, Broadway in Charlotte.
Right.
Our size market and where we are in just the routing of the general entertainment world, we wouldn't see the same bang for your buck as you see in Greenville and Charlotte
Sure.
and Greensboro, for example. Your capability, yeah, like Broadway rooms are the most capable rooms out there. But when we're talking about the total budget, is that really what Asheville's room should be? And should we be focusing on like concerts, multi-purpose, symphony?
Right.
Broadway is good. People call it the cocaine of the entertainment industry because like once you start, you can't stop because it does so well. But we're not going to be like a Wicked style room, even if we're a Broadway room, just because of where we are in market size. So
But
that's
normally
a thing to
that brings
consider.
a bunch of other things in with it.
Yes, it does.
It's not just, it's all the ancillary things that come with it. Once you're Broadway capable,
Yep.
it opens you up to other kind of shows. So
It does. It's the most flexible of all the setups, for sure.
It's the only one that stops the turning of the neck to watch, right?
No, two of the options cure the neck
They do?
situation, yes. Yeah.
Just curious.
To me, the real question is like, does the marginal extra investment to get to
That's
Broadway
it.
level account for the marginal extra in revenue that you would get from that? That would be the,
going from 11 million a year to 14 million a year, is that extra 3 million a year? Does that equal more than 3 million a year economic impact? What is the economic impact in that? I don't know the answer to that, and I think that's the actual question that council needs to be looking at.
Makes sense.
I appreciate the input.
the total price tag is a little scary.
Right.
That's what these things cost.
Yeah, but when you look at what we're gonna get back, if we don't make a big bite on this, we're not gonna be able to
We want to make the right bite.
Yeah, if you look back to the 70s when the Civic was built and the theater was adjusted to a theater from the flat-floored room, whatever we invested then, I don't know what it was, we've certainly got that return back in the last 50 years. So you have to look at it as a long play, for sure.
Will you be able to share with us at the work session some other high-cost projects, just so we, to Brian's point, that we know this is like relative to the
That it's
industry?
relative, yeah, I think we
Yeah.
can do that.
Okay.
Rock Hill's just started one.
Yep. Theirs is only like 500 seats, and it's something like 110 million, too.
Yeah, it might be hard if there's not a recent one with today's construction prices, but
Yeah.
Oh,
See if you-
no, there?
There's
There
some
are
out
some.
there.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot that were greenlit during pandemic that are now reaping the rewards of inflation. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
And I think Dustin's next, and he was gonna tap me for baseball, so if you want, I can just stay up here and talk baseball.
Go right, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
New plan and existing plan? Yeah, all right. All right, so I'm Chris Corll. I'm community,
That's good. That's really good.
with Community and Regional Entertainment Facilities for this one. And we're here to talk about the baseball stadium project, which is working its way through a conditional zoning process that will get to council in October. So what you see up here now is the current site plan of the baseball stadium, working right field to left field. That's your picnic area, ticket office clubhouse, visitors clubhouse, and then a small party area over on left field. So our new plan structure that we're working towards, with goals of making this more of a multi-purpose facility. And Dustin's got some bigger ones that you can look at too if you'd like. So,
We can see this on the screen. Just turn it around for the audience, if you don't mind.
cool. So I'll work down the numbers to give you an idea first. So number one, which is right field corner, so we'd be demoing down the structure that's there currently, building a new structure that would have a tunnel for semi-trucks to get on the floor, but also would be your team store, your box office, home clubhouse. It would be suites and club area, hitting tunnels, weight room, all of that stuff would be packed into the right field structure there. You'll see it looks a little tight on plan right to the property line. It's about 11 feet to the property line, 16-ish feet to the roadway. So that's part of the landscaping buffer on the conditional zoning that we're requesting. Another conditional zoning request is heights. It's an industrial, I did last time too. It's an institutional zoning currently, and to avoid it becoming a central business district zoning, we're trying to do conditional within that. So heights for the outfield wall and for the scoreboard, and then parking are the three big ones. So number two on this plan, we'd be converting the current home locker room into the visitors locker room and clubhouse. It would have all their space there. There's a few number threes. So that's new like picnic style area spaces. So like fixed tables and seats like you see at a lot of major league and minor league ballparks. The number fours that are up around the left field area are new food and beverage service areas. So some of those would be private group areas. Some of them would be open to public areas, just depending on the structure of how tickets are sold for a given event. Number five would be moving the bullpens out to be married together in left field. So a cool aspect of this is that the outfield wall would be see-through, so you could see the bullpen happening in the concourse. That's 360, which is number 6 next on my list. Would be up above it, so kids could actually be like at the rail watching the players warm up, which is always a lot of fun at a baseball game. Number 6 is a full wraparound 360 concourse. So now, as you know, you get to third base and you have to turn around and come back to first base. This would give us 360 aspects, similar to most major league and minor league stadiums. Number 7, which is up in the upper left, you can't see where that arrow goes, but that is a new structured scoreboard, so a video board. That's part of that height that I mentioned with conditional zoning. Top of that board would be approximately 60 feet. Top of the light poles, just to give you a reference, is 80 feet, so it's still below like current height that's out there. Number 8 is down on the plan bottom right, so that's a new entry area, so that's expanding that entry area, making it a little bigger, easier to get in and out of the gates there, and then just a big entry plaza on that concourse. Again, with goals of other events other than baseball. Make it functional for baseball, but make it so we can have cider fest or craft fair, concert, and like flow people through very easily. Number 9, which is the field, it really specifically in right field, so you can see where the color gets darker, we would actually be pushing the right field wall into the hill a little bit, 23 feet to be exact, and that would help get us a little bit closer to most minor league and major league stadiums. Doesn't get to the Astros request. They actually want us to be 340 feet. We'd be at 323 feet. But this is really what's realistic with the property lines and the fact that we're going into a mountain. And then number 10, which is center field there is a new batter's eye. So there's a requirement. It's the Green Monster, as you might know. It's a center field. There's like that bigger portion that never has signage on it. It's so the batter can see the ball coming out of the pitcher's hand. So that would build up a different style fence than what you see there now, because it's all the same all the way across the outfield now. So yeah, that's the general overview of the site plan. I'm sure we'll be back with more to come as we get deeper into design. The team started just in August, so we're about a month in at this point. Any questions?
Does it change the overall seating capacity?
Give or take, no. We're losing a good number of seats for ADA purposes and some of the construction, but then we're gaining some back. The design team told us we should be like maybe minus 100 up to plus 200 depending on finals. So we're basically right where we were as far as baseball goes.
So that 360-degree concourse, does that in the future open up additional seating if you have access to that side of it? I mean, I'm trying to just imagine the sort of topography.
In right field, probably not, but yeah, like if we ever had money in the future and wanted to expand, there's definitely a footprint in left field that you could do like a grassy hill or try to put bleachers on it. Certainly an opportunity, yeah. But not in the plan and not designing for that for the future. Yeah.
On the kind of top left, if you will, it looks like there's a path. Is that connecting into the neighborhood behind it? It doesn't look like that's on the current existing plan.
Yeah, right, there's like a double door and like a little
Yeah.
roadway that curves. So that exists currently. It's a service roadway, so that's what the tourists use to bring in like all their field equipment and the promotions. So it feeds up to the parking lot at Mountainside Park. At one point, there was a design that would be another public gate, but that is not in the plan. We're trying to avoid sending public up through the neighborhood. We want everybody to come to the main entrance.
As part of the CZ, you need to have a neighborhood meeting. Have you had that yet?
We had it on Tuesday, yes.
Okay, how'd that go?
Really good. I think, jump in if I miss anything here, but the biggest highlight really was just they want to see an in-writing approved traffic and parking plan.
Okay.
That when we're going to try to find a way to combine both McCormick and Memorial Field above it into one parking plan, so that way we don't have one for baseball and still leave what happens up at Memorial just out in the wind. So we're hoping to try to combine both of those two things.
Okay, those are the only things that they talked about. Can you talk about the height of that building, number one, in relation to the neighborhood?
Yeah, so plan left, like southwest side of the plan, the height of that building would be approximately 60 feet above the entry gate. But as you get to plan right, where you see that little like written
So
top out.
at the road, it's only what?
At
Because the
the-
road's going up.
At the entry gate, it's about 60 feet high. At the road, which is like, right up here,
Yep, that's right.
that's about 20 feet above grade. So we kind of go into the mountain, if you
Right.
will. So compared to the houses in the neighborhood, they're all actually going to be above the height of that roof just because they're up on a hill above it.
Okay.
But I don't know exactly how tall all the houses are in there. I think that might be part of the conditional zoning process, but.
Okay. Yeah, that would be something I would kind of want staff to look at with you is the impact of that mass on the neighborhood. That's one of the biggest things that I'm seeing. Okay.
Will there be a stadium organ?
Brian has mentioned a few times that he would like an organ, so I think there actually might be a organ.
Dream gig.
But
Dream
budget
gig.
dependent, yeah.
Chris, could you outline next steps of the review process again?
Yeah, next steps, we will be at a TRC meeting on October 16th. Yep, and then a special planning and zoning meeting on October 18th, and then we'll be in front of council on October 24th. So that will be for the conditional zoning on the 24th, and we'll also be at council on the 24th with a request for the contract approval of our construction manager at risk. So we'll have two things at that meeting related to the stadium to help keep us on time. And right now, we are still very much so on the timeline, so construction can start August, like Labor Day, basically, of 2024, and we'd be reopened with the stadium opening day of April 2026, and we plan to have construction and baseball through the 2025 season.
Okay.
Construction and baseball at the same time.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll find a way.
You can't do that with Broadway.
That's true.
Very good. Any other questions? Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Our next item of business is the one everyone is waiting for, College Patent Bike Lane Updates Presentation. Whee!
Great.
I don't know how to get
Oh, here, I'll help.
Thank you, Dana.
So we have it pulled. Let's just do
Ah,
this. It's this.
Wonderful.
one,
Thank you.
And then, yeah.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name's Anna Sexton, and I am a planner in the Transportation Department. I'm here today to give you an update on the College and Patton Bike Lanes project and also talk with you about the next steps that we have in store for the project. To sort of recap what this project is about, it would add buffered separated bike lanes to College and Patton downtown. The neon green that you see in this image is the project area where the bike lanes would be added. And this is sort of a zoomed in aerial to give you an idea of what type of connectivity it would provide to downtown. Key takeaways for this project. The city has existing plans and policies in place that directly call for more bike facilities in the central business district and across the city. And this project would connect existing bike lanes as well as future facilities, including greenways throughout the city. Community and stakeholder engagement for the project began in February of 2022. Part of that engagement involved the city staff presenting to the Downtown Commission at its December 9th, 2022 meeting, where the commission voted to support the project 6-3. Following a September 2022 update to City Council, staff was asked to enhance engagement activities. And so that occurred between October of 2022 and this past summer. And throughout this process, we've received stakeholder feedback and incorporated that feedback into revisions to the design. This project is currently budgeted in the city's approved capital improvement plan. And project design elements increase or improve safety for all users, so pedestrians, bicyclists, cars, delivery trucks. And our update to you today precedes a presentation that staff will give to council on October 10th, seeking a resolution of support for project implementation. This is a zoomed out view of what the broader vision for multimodal connectivity looks like for the city. The solid green lines are where bike lanes currently exist. The solid blue lines are existing greenways. And then the dashed lines are planned bike lanes and greenways. And those run the gamut of being simply lines on a page to going through a feasibility study currently to already being designed to, in the near-ish future, being bid for construction. And then the red dashed lines in downtown are where this project would link up to everything. A couple of the design features that I want to talk with you about are the fact that we've chosen to add bike lanes on the left side of the road. So this is something different for the city. This was a decision made based on analysis of where various conflict points were related to parking maneuvers, transit stops, and driveways. It's a fairly common application for one-way roadways to have bike lanes situated on the left side. It would remove one vehicular through lane of traffic, or one vehicular through lane for travel, but it would keep right turn lanes at traffic signals. It would add high visibility crosswalks to enhance pedestrian safety, and it would also provide additional dedicated space for delivery vehicles, which is expected to reduce the need for delivery trucks to double park in the street, so improving safety and also mitigating congestion associated with that. This project is being proposed because College and Patton are unique in that they're the only main east-west streets that run through downtown and also connect to other points beyond to East and West Asheville. These bike lanes, as I mentioned earlier, would connect existing bike lanes and future bike lanes in downtown and beyond. This is a project that is quick build, low cost, and high value, and what that means is it doesn't expand the footprint of the roadway. We're taking what's already there and using paint to restripe the roadway to add this facility. The project also involves the addition of signage and vertical delineators, so armadillos similar to what you see on Cox Avenue, as well as they're about 3 feet high vertical delineators that that are spring-loaded and designed to withstand impact so they can be run over if they need to be. So compared to some of our other capital projects, this is one that could be implemented fairly quickly and for less cost than what you typically see. Asheville also consistently ranks as one of the top cities in North Carolina for bicycle and pedestrian fatalities. So that's not a list we want to be on. This is a recap or a summary of public engagement that's been done starting in 2022. Letters and flyers were delivered to businesses along the corridor, notifying them of engagement opportunities. The city held virtual stakeholder meetings at a time when we were still working our way back into the world as COVID was letting up. We also held walking tours where we talked through the project and gained feedback from folks who attended those. Presentations were given to the Downtown Commission, the Multimodal Commission, and the Public Space Management Committee. And the dates starred here are the several dates where staff made presentations to the Downtown Commission.
Just in case we forget.
Just in case. Moving into 2023, in January, the mayor and staff met with business owners and agreed to hold one more public meeting. That public meeting took place on April 19th, and it was a public open house, so folks could drop in as it fit with their schedule and learn about the project and provide input. Before that meeting began, there was an hour set aside for direct stakeholders to come and chat and provide feedback to city staff. That meeting also kicked off the opportunity to complete an online survey for the project, which was open until June 5th. We had 642 participants in that survey. This link here gives you the full survey report, but I won't go over that today. Staff was interviewed in May for What's Up AVL, which is a city-run radio show at WRES, which is along the project corridor. It's just outside of where the bike lanes would be added. We also had a table with surveys and flyers at Grindfest and emailed survey results to stakeholders once the survey closed. I'll also add that in July, after all of the feedback was gathered primarily from the survey and from the public open house, staff went back to the design and updated it, and then met a number of downtown stakeholders on site to talk through those updates and explain how that feedback was incorporated. And so that's where this slide comes into play, and I just want to kind of talk through the Pritchard Park area. This is really where I would say more of the substantial updates occurred in the design based on the feedback that we received. And so I'll start at the corner of Haywood and College, so the top right, and kind of work my way around the triangle. But you'll notice that since the bike lane's on the left side, that means things that existed on the left side now have to be moved to the right side of the road. So that's where the loading zone is. 5 metered spaces are going to be converted to loading zone space there. What we heard is that loading zone space is really, really important in this area and needs to be easily accessed. The Tupelo Honey Streetery will remain. And then the existing conditions today, beyond the crosswalk that you see where it says meter and ADA, those parking spaces will remain unchanged. Jumping down to the bottom left, that is right at the corner of Patton and Cox. Again, in hearing that loading zone space was important, there is an existing loading zone there, and it would be extended by 1 space. And then the rest of that area remains unchanged as what you see now. So we have 2 metered spaces, 2 10-minute spaces, and an ADA space. Jumping across the crosswalk there would be a metered space added. And now there's also a new fire lane and loading zone in front of Restoration Hotel, which is a public loading zone. And then rounding the corner onto Haywood Street, Some of the metered spaces that were removed from other places along or within this area would be added back onto Haywood Street, and then also the APD space would be moved to that area as well. So I think, oh, yes.
Where's the fire hydrant that they put in the wrong location? The fire hydrant was supposed to be like in one location in front of the restoration, I think, and it ended up being a little bit different than what they had shown on the plan. I was just curious if that affected any of this?
We looked at how we might be able to extend loading zones with the new location of the fire hydrant, and also,
The loading zone shifted.
It
right?
did
It
shift
shifted
because of that, and I think we also looked
east.
at what might be involved in moving that fire hydrant, and it was
It was a
infeasible.
nightmare. Sure.
Is that fire lane that's there now, was that always there in the previous renderings, or is this new and changed? The fire
It
space?
says new fire lane and loading zone.
Yeah.
Is that new from the last round of input, or is
I
that
think it
new
is.
from months, 2 years ago?
Fire portion is because of
The
fire
restoration hotel and the
hydrant.
fire
Okay,
hydrant.
that's-
Yeah.
That is new, right? Because it was a
Right.
space? Was it a loading or a 10-minute?
I can't remember.
I
I
don't
think
know
it was a
exactly.
10-minute. I bet one of these guys know.
The 10 minutes have not moved.
Okay.
There was a loading space that is now a metered space, but the fire area is new, and so the
That's what I
loading
thought,
zone
okay.
that was planned for restoration shifted.
Well, and we had heard lots of concerns if the loading, if folks stopped and loaded right in the middle, what would fire and safety do? So I wonder if that's from that input. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
No problem. To recap, sort of what you're seeing here is that none of the ADA spaces will be impacted as part of this project. And in total, in this area in particular, there's a net, excuse me, net loss of 2 metered spaces.
And there's a gap between
Mhm.
this end of the bike lanes and our bike lanes, I guess, coming up French Broad, where are they?
Conant Cox.
Cox, okay, so there's a little gap right there where we don't have dedicated bike lanes currently.
Currently,
It's, okay.
yeah. This sort of segues into other top concerns that we've heard throughout the outreach and engagement process. I think at the top, again, is not enough loading space along our curbs. So the project would add approximately 130 feet of new loading zone area. And some loading zones obviously would shift their locations, but none would be removed. There's also been concerns expressed over parking loss and that parking's unavailable downtown. There would be a net loss of 17 metered spaces. 9 of those would be lost in order to convert space into more loading zone area. A lot of that is going to be on College and Patton each between Haywood and Lexington. Again, no ADA parking spaces are being removed. And then also want to just highlight, as well, that parking garages are all there's several within 1/10 of a mile of the project area. We've heard concerns over traffic congestion and that it might increase because of this project. Staff looked at the existing volumes per day of vehicles, and the existing volumes on College Street and Patton Avenue are within the thresholds for single-lane streets. There's also, we recognize there's limitations and there's differences, but there's also comparisons, to volumes on other single-lane roadways in the city. Haywood Road, Biltmore Avenue, Charlotte Street all have at least twice as much or more volumes, or daily traffic volumes. There's concern over whether fire, police, emergency services would be able to navigate the new design. We've consulted with both APD and AFD. AFD has indicated that they don't have concerns with the project, and that the bike lane itself, in addition to the buffer, is wide enough for emergency vehicles to navigate if the traffic lane is blocked. And this goes back to the spring-loaded delineators that I mentioned earlier. They're designed to withstand impact and be run over if needed. There's been concern that adding a bike lane here is unsafe. and providing dedicated facilities for different modes of travel can create more predictability on the roadway, which prevents interactions and conflicts and crashes. And it could create a network that's more inviting and safer for all users, not just bicyclists. There's been concern over businesses losing money as a result of the bike lanes going in. There are, ooh, that moves, a host of, of links on the project page that accompany this bullet point, but demonstrating that there are many studies out there that find businesses adjacent to bike lanes don't see negative impact, and often they benefit financially. And the last concern that we have listed is that the bicycle advocates are the ones pushing this project. This goes back to the city having longstanding policies and plans in place that support additional bicycle infrastructure and call for bike lanes downtown, and also the city's Multimodal Transportation Commission and Downtown Commission have voted in favor of the project. So here's where we are today. The design was finalized in August 2023. Presenting to you today to give you a project update, and then our next steps are at the October 10th City Council meeting, seeking a resolution of support from council to implement the project. If that resolution is supported or adopted, city staff would then prepare and issue a bid for construction and implementation, and we anticipate council's consideration of that contract coming forth in February or March of next year. So to recap today, many city plans and policies exist that directly call for more bike facilities downtown and across the city. This project would connect to existing facilities and future facilities, including greenways. Community and stakeholder engagement began in February of 2022 and ran through summer of 2023. The Downtown Commission voted to support the project 6-3 at its December 2022 meeting. Multiple visions to the design have taken place in an iterative way based on stakeholder feedback. The project is currently budgeted in the city's approved capital improvement plan. Various project elements would improve safety for all users, and then we're here today to update you on staff presenting to council on October 10th for seeking a resolution of support for project implementation. And with that, I'll
So we are not
answer
scheduled to
questions.
vote on this, as we've already voted on this measure, and this is just an update to the project because they've made minor revisions, so we're not voting today. We're just hearing this as an update. Are there any questions for staff regarding the update and the revisions, the additional community engagement?
Do you feel that you have support from local businesses on this?
I think we've heard concern from folks along downtown corridors about loading zones and parking and emergency vehicle access, and the design revisions that we've made have attempted to address those concerns.
Can you go back to the visual of Pritchard Park?
Sure.
Okay, so top center, 5 metered spaces converting to loading. Was this the original presentation? Did businesses push for the additional loading? I'm hearing both. Businesses are worried about the loss of parking, and are we going to lose too much loading? So I'm wondering how we settled on the 5 spaces.
Sure. A previous iteration of this design had a longer loading zone where these 3 metered spaces are on Haywood Street. And we heard from businesses that that was not feasible. A loading zone, yeah.
It's an awkward spot.
Based on truck turning movements, based on where deliveries would need to travel to get to storefronts, it didn't make sense. And so wanted to maintain comparable length to the loading zone that currently exists on Haywood Street, or I'm sorry, College Street, and that's where those 5 spaces come into play.
There's a net loss of 4 spaces around Pritchard Park, and then additional loading zone added.
A net loss of 2 spaces, 2
Net loss
metered
of 2.
spaces.
I got 5, 1, 1.
I know,
and
it's.
3.
Can I add something too regarding the streetery? I recognize that it's labeled here. that is not a permanent use of that space. So there's an annual permitting program, and we understand that the business intends to
Yeah.
apply and pursue a annual streetery. But if that's not a streetery, it will be metered parking. So I just want to point that out.
Making it a net zero loss around this. So we've got the one removed bottom left, one removed bottom, or one added back bottom center, so they negate each other. 3 added across from the ATM and bank there, and then 5 lost to conversion to loading. So net 2 lost, just in this little area. And to Dana's point, if the streetery doesn't renew, then 2 come back. Okay, that is helpful.
And the streetery will be going through a whole new process with a built platform and everything. So we really,
That's what we reviewed last
Yeah.
month, right? Right.
Well, and
Okay.
what made us do, so the 10-minute spaces versus the metered spaces, how did we land on the 10-minute need and decide that was still what's best?
to
Do we
keep
know?
the 10-minute
Yeah,
spaces there.
was there a discussion around that with the business community?
I'm
or-
not aware of all of the consideration related to everything else that's been discussed as part of this project. I know broadly for the 10-minute curbside pickup spaces, we've been removing some where we can. We obviously launched that program during COVID to facilitate more convenience for people to pick up goods. We understand that the pharmacy appreciates that option, and so I think that's
Are
the
they
primary.
metered? They're just-
What?
Are they metered or just, they're not? So
No.
they're just loading zones that we can enforce better?
I wouldn't
Because
say
we're
we
called
can
at 10
enforce them
minutes?
better. I would say
Oh.
we encourage a quicker turnover.
So the signage is different, but it's essentially a loading zone, saying you've got 10 minutes. Okay. It's not commercial. Yeah. I'm just looking long-term if we had another problem with metered spaces and.
I think I've asked this question before, and I don't remember your answer. How are you, what are your metrics for success? Is it fewer pedestrian fatality? How do you know if this is working and if it needs to be adjusted?
We will, that's a great
It
question.
is a great question.
Looking at crash data is something that we're looking at currently, and historical
and-
crash data within the project area. And so I think post-implementation as well, that would be data that we would look at.
One piece, and then.
That would be one
I mean,
piece.
is there we're hearing their concerns. I don't know how we measure such things, but we're hearing concerns that, loading times, driving business and things like that, but it's multivariate. I don't know that this is the only thing. I didn't know if there's like a way to measure bike traffic, vehicular traffic. I know you'll have traffic counts and things like that. I would like to see some kind of metrics, 6 months, a year on, that council could take a look at and say, okay, this is working, or it's not working in this particular area. Maybe it needs to be adjusted. I'd like to know kind of like how you're doing that from both the business community as well as all the other users that the business community serves, right? It needs to work for everybody
I think
as best we can.
that's good feedback that staff can discuss in preparation
What
for the
that means, yes.
October 10th meeting.
And what comes to mind too is, because this is a challenging one at council, last time it came to us, it was split. I think I ended up in the unfortunate position of being a potential swing vote. And that's one of my concerns. So like we did with Merriman, when there was a lot of concern, like, is this really a good idea? Is this the right timing? And so we left it on the table that if it didn't work out, we could put it back. And I think we've heard enough, I'm getting mixed input from downtown. Some people are very adamantly, clearly opposed, and others are in support. So it is a mix, but I'm thinking that a trial or data collection or some kind of analysis would help, so that if it were some horrible thing, that we would be able to alter it. I'll be speaking more about that with the council meeting, but that's coming.
Well, and in my view, that's one of the beauties of a lot of what you're doing, is that you're not changing curbs, you're not changing curb cuts. A lot of this is just really paint and little stanchions sticking up. So if it's not working, whatever that means, it can be adjusted.
Right.
So
And I just want to note, I was curious here while we're talking, but what's the future growth of e-bikes slated to be? And it's slated to more than double, like pedal power, electric assist pedal power, more than double in the next 10 years nationally. And I would think that a place like Asheville is going to will have a lot of early adopters just because we're hilly, and that's a real game changer for people bicycling and using this type of infrastructure. So I think that clearly we're looking at a situation where there will be demand for safety from a growing number of people. I think that we really need to think hard before we deny this very large, growing group of people who are going to be wanting access to public infrastructure in the way that they choose. And that having infrastructure choices is going to be really important. And so I'm very supportive of this project because, whatever the safety concerns are now, if we don't do this, they will be even more dangerous in the future. And so this is, I think, a wonderful opportunity to increase safety, not just for our current residents, but for our future residents and their changing needs.
Unless we have
I
additional
have a quick
comment.
question.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at this, why is it representing that just the curve around the left side of the park there and the corner will be all green? Will all the bike lanes not be solid green?
It will not be solid green.
Is there a reason for that?
Cost, maintenance. By having the buffer there, that also signals to folks that there's a different facility, but typical application of the green pavement marking is only used at what we call it conflict points or
Intersections, okay.
intersections.
To your point about e-bikes, I think it's true, but also things like scooters and other modes. And, this continually comes to us as a complete streets attempt. Are we looking at complete streets? And sometimes I'm thinking that we're not really complete if we're just bikes and cars. So there is some ongoing discussion around that too. And I guess multimodal has looked at it before, but it's kind of out in limbo. Council will be looking at some of this all modes language.
Okay. If there's no other comments or questions for staff, I'm going to open it up for public comment.
Thank you.
And we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Very much. I appreciate that. So for those of you making public comment on this issue, please come forward, state your name into the microphone. We're going to give you 3 minutes, and I'll try to be as responsible as I can. Mark, set, go. Who's first?
My name is Sheila Surratt, and I am totally against the bike lane. Did you all just say that if it didn't work out, you would change it back? Did I hear that correct?
It's a discussion point.
Why would you do something like that and waste that much more taxpayers' money? That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Let's just waste more taxpayers' money. This is not working out. That is crazy. I'm about to laugh because that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. I mean, it's ridiculous. We need safety. You want to talk about safety? Hire security for that ministry down there. Get those people help. Get people from the A-Hope help because they're running around downtown Asheville after they go down there and meet and get their drugs. And they're running around terrorizing tourists. They're terrorizing residents. They're terrorizing businesses. They're terrorizing employees that work downtown who are scared to go to work. A friend of mine works on Wall Street. She is terrified. They come in there in her business. One guy brought a hammer in and said, "Give me a pack of cigarettes. I'm going to bust your head." I mean, it's really bad on Wall Street. But the issue is the money needs to be put in security to protect the citizens of Asheville, not these people who don't even live downtown and have a clue on what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
We can hear very well. There is no need to yell at us.
My name is Russ Nicholson. I'm an architect in town. I've been here about 8 years. I work there at Glazier Architecture across from the park. I think that there are a couple of issues here. One is that the request for public input is misrepresented by the bicycle group advocating this program. So that's just, there's lots of dates listed for when the public's input was solicited, but there's never been a public charrette where we actually could sit there with the developers of the plan and draw and show from an occupant's perspective where we see loading occur every day. So that I think needs to be mentioned. But I think the left-hand lane is a mistake. Can we pull up the image of Pritchard Park that was just shown here? I've got just a specific couple of comments about, again, related to loading.
Let's make sure we don't
Anyway,
cut this 3 minutes.
the two bike lane portions that go across Pritchard Park now, as proposed, are places where trucks load. And if these little floppy things that separate the bike lane from the car lane are meant for a emergency vehicle to drive over at 30 miles an hour, which they will be driving over at 30 miles an hour on a response to an emergency, then loading trucks are going to just roll over them, and they're going to park there. So I guess a big question I have is, who is going to tell the trucks that are loading in and out of these businesses that they can't park where they park? Because they will be parking on both the south side of Pritchard and the north side of Pritchard, where the bike lanes are shown to be occupying. Those are current loading zones. The lower loading zone here on the south side of Patton coming in is in front of the hotel, and it's not used by any of the trucks that are actually loading freight. It's used for valet parking for the hotel. So that loading zone is not really accurately defined as what it is used for now. And it won't be used for, the hotel is going to lobby and not allow that to be used as a freight loading zone. So of the 3 loading zones shown on this particular diagram, much less the other portions, that loading zone is not realistic. And both the bike lane areas that are proposed are now currently used for loading all different times of day. Thanks for allowing me to provide some input.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, members. My name is Jack Eigelman, and I am a resident of Asheville, and I serve as a member of the Multimodal Transportation Committee. We sent a letter to City Council regarding the project, and we submitted that as well as a public record for this meeting. So I'd like to encourage people who are attending and looking at the minutes to check that out. And I'd like to read just a little portion of it. I probably don't have time, and I'd like to make some comments in addition. First comment, I really want to give a shout out to the city's transportation department on their thorough work on this. I feel like they've done an excellent job in soliciting public comment and doing just a thoughtful job with limited funds to create a project that I think will be beneficial to the city. And before I read portions of this, I'd also like to mention too that I am a part owner of a business that is not downtown, that's in the River Arts District. And I don't want to speak on behalf of my partners, but I will say we have definitely benefited hugely from the work that has been done in the River Arts District with bike lanes. So I think it can be beneficial. That is a different context, but I still think it's important to consider how important bike lanes and pedestrian traffic is. So let me read a portion of this letter that's on the public record, and this was addressed to City Council. The Multimodal Transportation Commission expresses our firm support for the proposed College Patton Bike Lane project in the heart of our city. We are advocates for safer and more accessible streets in downtown Asheville, and are committed to the principles that no loss of life on our roads is acceptable, and that everyone in our city deserves safe streets. Failing to support this project will discount years of dedicated volunteer work and city staff time to support a safe streets objective. And I'll skip just a little bit to get to some highlights. Both the city of Asheville and the state of North Carolina have endorsed a Vision Zero commitment, underscoring the importance of road safety for all roadway users. It's a zero death initiative. Abandoning the project would be a significant departure from a complete streets objective and would set a precedent that City Council prioritizes accommodating motor vehicle drivers above all other users in future projects. We also think this important project fills a crucial gap in our larger network, providing much needed connectivity through downtown. We also understand and respect that concerns have been raised from business operators regarding loading, traffic congestion, and on-street parking. And, I would like to say, just to echo a point that you made, Brian, is that, the Multimodal Transportation Commission has a wide range of expertise, and we'd welcome the opportunity as this project unfolds to problem solve and make it work for everyone. And to Councilwoman Turner's point is to really, we are not bike lane, we are not the bike community. We are advocating for all users, safer automobiles, for wheelchair users, for bikes, for pedestrians, et cetera. And we think this project is the right track to doing that will have a long-term benefit for the city. I probably went over my 3 minutes, but
Thank you.
yeah,
You did,
thank you.
You're representing the multimodal transportation, like, pretty sure. Not representing them, but you're a member there. We've received your longer letter and read it, and thank you for your
Yeah.
hard work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Patty Glazer. I've been working downtown and I'm located on the bike route as a building owner and property owner for 40 years. I'm not going to get into lots and lots of details here. I've sent things in previously and submitted a very brief statement, but I'd like to just read one last sentence of what I sent in last night. This has nothing to do with whether or not bike lanes or multimodal transportation should be incorporated into downtown. No one is against that concept. The proposed remaining single lane is not adequate to be able to handle the existing and increased congestion, as well as accommodating all of the services, buses, deliveries, pickups, drop-offs, emergency vehicles, loading zones, parking, et cetera, needed in this busy downtown corridor. The current width of both College and Patton are limiting factors. Move the concept elsewhere. And I think folks are losing the focus on that. But that's why all those signs have gone up in the businesses saying, no single lane, no road diet. If there were an extra lane available on those streets, curb to curb, take it for that use. And a couple other things, well, there's a lot of things that are misrepresented in both this presentation that was given today, as well as other ones. For example, let's just say emergency vehicles. And again, all day long, every day, between EMS, police, fire, there's lots of that. Not just because of Pritchard Park being there, but also serving the businesses or just trying to get through. And I know that politically, there's been a very nice statement from the head of various departments saying they're not concerned because the curb-to-curb distance is the same. However, when you talk to individuals in any of those departments, they are in fact concerned and they're not speaking the party line. If the curb-to-curb stays the same, but one lane is intended to be for electric wheelchairs, those little single wheel things, bicycles, and then a fire truck comes up. So you folks are promoting that, well, you just use that bike lane for emergency vehicles. Well, that clearly is a disaster waiting to happen, clearly unsafe. And then you also promote that, well, inexperienced users riding bicycles and things could use this bike lane. And then a fire truck comes up behind you or an EMS blaring its horn. And because there's already a lot of congestion with the number of lanes that we have now, when you reduce the traffic to a single lane, it's going to be even more congested. So where are these folks that are in the emergency lane, in the bike lane, supposed to go when these emergency guys need to go through? They're supposed to merge into a gridlocked, bumper-to-bumper, single lane downtown traffic. And it's also going to get more congested as time goes on. There's just lots of fallacies in the way this was presented, including all of the public engagement and including how the meetings were set up, but I'll just stop there with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Anyone else? We'll close public comment unless there's anyone else that would like to speak. All right, I'll close public comment at this time. So once again, we're not voting on this. We've already voted on it. This was an update provided to us. I will say that I expect that staff, transportation staff especially, we're taking notes on a lot of these issues, and we'll communicate that, any updates to council as the project proceeds. And you can also, I would make sure and recommend that you let council know what you think as it's presented to council. So with that, thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next item of business, which is Development Project Impact Review for 215 Haywood Street Courtyard Hotel. And we'll go from there. And I thank everyone for their patience. We're running a little behind schedule, but I think we're doing okay. Wow. Oh, I better be careful.
This one's
Yeah, anyway, that's a whole other thing.
Try the link from the agenda, because I think the other window got closed.
This one?
Or either one.
Oh, okay.
I had it open in a tab, I think.
Can you just go to the, yeah.
The link isn't working.
There we go. Got it.
Thank you for the matrix.
Yes, Chair, Commissioners, my pleasure. I'll wait for, should I wait?
Yeah.
Just a minute?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Of course.
I guess we took a recess. We have no quorum. I have no power.
I like Michael.
This was the exact same discussion in the exact same way, with the exact same people. Yeah.
Oh, I meant the next thing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was still in the last one.
There is a lot of deja vu.
The number of changes. So this is what I saw yesterday, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exact same thing.
For real, right?
This is literally Hotel 6 in that area, if you count the Indigo and the DoubleTree and the Embassy Suites.
I mean,
And
we're
then
calling it
the-
hotel district.
Yeah.
I did hear that people said if we're gonna have them, put them all in one place. You know,
Well,
like,
this is
it.
becoming the hotel district.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is it's
It's
like
like
the
one
highest
hotel.
point in town in terms of like topography, you know? I mean, it was Battery Park, you know, so and we're putting our tallest,
When we
coolest,
start
we're
looking-
putting all our guests on our tallest place to look around.
Clay, when we start looking at these, can we start getting like Carter
I
Street
have thoughts.
overlay, like Hotel 1, 2? I'm losing context because they're all just in entitlement and review. You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking at this one now and I'm wondering, well, the other 4, I gotta remember where they were.
Yeah, I can like call up a Google map. Is that okay without the?
Yeah, I just mean in general, like as we see this many getting reviewed down there. It's hard to keep up, frankly. I've been having a hard time.
Oh, I keep forgetting that.
Look at Myrtle Beach, but we don't want to do that in Charleston, Savannah, Chattanooga. But still, I'm generally hearing, just while Clay's getting ready here, I'm hearing when we went through the Flatiron, we'll call it a review, I was gonna say debacle. I met with those developers who were very angry that the downtown commission was kind of opposed. And they said they had a study with 1,000-room demand. So this is like 6-something years ago. And the developers of Aspire and other hotels in this area have told me there's still 1,000-room demand.
Well,
So-
one of the, Stacy did this a number of years ago. This was about that time that we actually, at the time, we had fewer, I think this is back in 2014, 2015. At the time, we had less hotel rooms than we had in Asheville in 1922.
Well, in 2017, I did analysis for downtown, and we had evenly split at that moment. There were more residential places than hotel rooms, but some of these coming online, we're going to tip it.
Do the TVs ever blank out for you?
Yeah.
Today.
Every time we have a meeting, the TVs blink like crazy, and I come in here and they work perfectly.
Great.
I don't understand.
Anyway, all right, please,
Okay.
please proceed, sir.
Chair, Commissioners, good morning. My name is Clay Mitchell. I'm the urban planner in the Planning and Urban Design Department. And I'm here to give you some background with a review of a hotel at the top of Ann Street and immediately next to the parking area of the DoubleTree Hotel. Just to give you context, this is a very active area right now. We're talking today about this property where the mouse is. This is the DoubleTree. In this dirt area is now the close to being completed Embassy Suites. And you've previously seen a hotel on this parking lot, which is the Tribute Hotel. And you've also seen a hotel that is proposed for this lot immediately behind Jan Davis Tires, which is called Tempo. So this would, in this very limited area, be the 6th hotel. And this is proposed and already disclosed as a Courtyard Marriott Hotel. Does that help with the context?
It does.
It does, thank you very much.
And
Jan Davis, geez.
I live right here, so I get to watch all this every day.
Do you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, are you at Patton College?
I'm in the Patton, and I face north. And so
Wow.
yeah,
You're
it's
the one
pretty
with the bike
interesting.
on the balcony. I
Lots
bet.
of hotels.
Yeah.
Well, I recently learned that the speed limit on Patton is actually 20 miles an hour. People get 20 miles an hour by the time they get across the intersection. That's another issue.
To your point,
Let's
Joe,
see. This is the best one,
it's
I
on the
believe.
list now.
Yeah. So let me show you the layout of the hotel, because this is a very limited piece of property. And then I'll go over, let me set the context first. This hotel has, development has interacted with planning staff about some questions, responded to those. We've had a pre-application meeting with them. Yesterday was an informal presentation to the Design Review Commission. Commissioner Moffett was very engaged in the discussion. It's a constrained site, and we just got the application yesterday for Technical Review Committee, which will be next month, and then we'll be moving them on to formal Design Review Commission and ultimately the Planning and Zoning Commission. What you're looking at here is kind of the layout of the first floor. I'm just going to give you some of the operations of the site. So there will be a vehicle entrance on the west side, which moves it further away from Ann Street, which is a better location. If it was closer to Ann Street, there'd be too many conflicts in that area. And you see that it comes in, there's a drop-off, there's a lot of activity on that first floor, and then there's a ramp going down to parking, which is below the building. And there's one level of parking below the building. This is a close-up of that entryway. See the typical sidewalks and street trees as well, and I'll talk about the inside. I want to get to the parking right away because the parking is very interesting. Let's get the other site.
Stackers? Lifts? Yeah, they got a lift. They're doing lifts?
Yep.
Holy shit, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's,
My goodness.
yep. It took us a while to figure out what was going on when we saw the site, actually, the site plans.
I've been wondering when that would show up. Do they also get top floor views of the city? So they just stack it inside?
Place on these all the time.
It's a rooftop bar where you can see other rooftop bars.
Hey, it's a thing. Wow, how is this that big on that tiny parcel?
Well, they're in a race to see who's got the last one on the end of the row so that they have the last view. So everyone
Isn't it all the
takes
same owner and
takes the
developer?
view from the last one, right?
I think they're all the same owner and developer, right?
No, this is Marriott. I don't think
No.
this is.
What
Well, those are just operators.
Yeah, but I don't
The developer, I think, is the same.
know that this is the hotel. I'm not sure. I mean, I think it might.
I think he's doing 4 there. I don't know
This
if
site
it's,
plan doesn't have the parking in
but
it.
the operator's Marriott.
There was one in the, it wasn't the site plan thing, it was,
This one?
as the floor plans elevations, that one's got the floor plans elevations.
What
That's
is
got
this
all
in
the-
this rendering?
Oh,
right
there we
now?
go, okay, thank you. All right, so here we go. So this is the subfloor, and the grayed out areas with the grates are actually lifts. So everything will be valeted. You see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there are 8 slots of tandem parking. So you can't have people tandem parking, that has to be valeted. And then all of the grade areas will be car lifts. So they'll bring a car, lift it, park another one underneath it. And that's how they're meeting their parking requirements. There's some discussion with code interpretation because hotels and associated uses is the text that says that hotels have to provide parking on site for those definition of uses. And so the query is, if there's separate leasable space, does that have to provide parking on site? And that argument was framed really well by the Design Review Commission yesterday, where they said, we don't require other restaurants and other locations to provide parking. Why would we require a restaurant just because it's in a hotel to require its own parking? So there's still some discussion about how many parking spaces are actually going to be provided, but you can see the level of work that they're putting in to get those spaces on site.
Is it a separate entrance restaurant, or is it a hotel restaurant connection?
Well, that's also, so that, let me show you the first floor, because that's where this comes in.
That's the difference, right?
That's what I would push for. If they have a separate entrance, I'm thinking like
Which is what we
Blackbird or
want.
something like that in the loft. So it serves the general public, you come there.
Then no
and eat.
restaurant, no parking requirement,
Right.
just like the others. But if you want to do a hotel like Aspire's trying to do, where they will not do a separate retail bay, but they'll do their own restaurant in there, then they should have to include the
Then
parking.
they have to park it.
That's probably the good policy area.
I think that's I don't want, I mean, I won't be issuing the opinion, even though I have an opinion. But I think you're on the same
Yeah.
track that most staff is if this is truly a separate, leasable, separate space, then fine. If it's the restaurant is the hotel's restaurant, that's an associated hotel use. The plans currently show 2 restaurants, though.
Oh.
This is on the first floor, so it's kind of a bistro style with the restaurant, and then there's a separate restaurant on the top floor. So
If they have that separate restaurant on the top floor, and if they have a public use elevator that I can come in downstairs and go up to, like in the Capitol building or
Can we
something like
require
that. The way you require it is by making them park it.
I meant require public access to
No.
rooftop bars.
No,
Yeah.
we can't require them to do that. I mean, they can, it's their facility. I don't think.
Although we
can
could add it to
require
the by right process.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how the DoubleTree operates, right? There's a separate elevator in that lobby area that you can take all the way to the rooftop bar without entering the lobby of the hotel proper.
That's,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah, you're like in that Claristory space or whatever that space is called.
yeah.
We're able to add it as a condition if it's coming to us conditionally zoned. However, this is a buy rate process, so I'm going to add it to the buy rate process updates. Because I think that's part of, we say the same thing about the ground floor. We want the activation, so this doesn't
Yeah,
just
I don't
be a
want to
parcel that disappears from the public. So if you're going to build a rooftop bar in some of our most beautiful places, we should be able to get up there.
Yeah, that's right.
We
And
made
if
the Flatiron
And
do
if we can't, then they park it.
Well, it's already parked in the sense that it's private to their guests. But, yeah,
Is it?
well, it sounds like it.
It's convention.
I don't know, man.
You know, what, define guest.
I don't know, but since this one's by right, we're limited, but let's think about that for updates.
Okay.
Well, also, I mean, almost all hotels have a policy that if you have a local address, they will not rent a room to you.
Yeah. Or within 50 miles is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're a local, they will not serve you a room. And
It's
then
'cause they're
any
probably
associated
local,
uses
right?
with that room, you are also not allowed to be served. If having a key is the.
You have to have a key fob to
Right.
get in.
I'm very skeptical that, the entire world except the 50-mile bubble around Asheville is allowed to use the services of this building, but anybody that actually lives here, you can't. Well, I mean, I needed a hotel room one time, and because I was just moving, I just needed a place to stay. And I had to go through, all these, I had to go around my elbow and to basically lie to the hotel owner just so I could have a place to rest my head and during the move.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, that's
That's part
fine.
of the landscape here about uses, though, I would say.
So I think with respect to that issue, there was some discussion with the design review committee at looking at this. You see the notch, which would make a logical location for a separate entrance if this area is going to be treated separately. So that was a good part of the conversation. And then on the second floor, this is the second floor. So there's a little outdoor seating space that you see above the fitness room. So that, the shared amenity of the fitness room in the lower part here, and then the outdoor deck kind of on the second floor, which will have views to the north and the west. And then we carry up multiple floors of rooms it's 6 floors total. These are all close-ups. And to the top floor. So this is the overall layout of the top floor, rooms. And then this is the restaurant. And the L shape on the left is an outdoor terrace, which will have the views to the mountains in both the north and the west. And this is the restaurant that has consistently appeared on the plan since they've been submitted. That restaurant I showed you at the bottom was in response to our comments about having separate activated space at the first floor, because it originally just showed lobby space, which is clearly not meeting the requirements. I would point out this thing, there's this weird seating area on the roof. Yeah. And I haven't figured that out yet, what that is. It'll be interesting. Anyway, here's some of the elevations to show you the fenestration and a little bit of the treatment of the materials of the building.
We didn't say a thing about green roofs yesterday.
Nope. I'll remind Tony. The cross sections of the building, and then one of the. Yeah, this was the storyboard, I guess you would call it, from the architect describing how they arrived at some of their design conclusions. A lot of discussion about existing hotels and some of the recessed windows and their approach to creating that. A lot of discussions about the bricks. What you see here is the result of an interpretation about the step back on the building. The minimum height of that was determined to be 2 stories. There was some conversation about, there's some confusing language in the code about the right-of-way width versus 2 stories. It's now been determined that the minimum street wall height before the step back is 2 stories. And so you see those 2 stories there at the lower part with brick, and then you see the ephes and the other brick treatments as you go up the building. The design committee also spent a lot of time talking about the entrance, and what I thought was the best point that I thought was made by the committee was this side of the building. This is a very high view area. People coming down 240 in either direction will be able to view that building, and I think the design committee was pretty concerned about the bland nature of this wall and the building, and it really should be a signature appearance, and I thought that was very, very nice input. There are no, other than this discussion about the restaurants, there's no residential uses, there's no other mix of uses. It is a tight site. It probably is going to lead to more discussions about this and Carter Street possibility of making a one-way loop. All boards have commented that on the last application, planning and zoning, design review, and I believe from my notes, this commission even mentioned that was an issue worth looking into. And then the rest here are some kind of elevations in context. This is looking up Haywood Street from the west, looking east. Any questions? It's relatively close to public transportation. There's a couple of stops up on Montfort, I believe, and then you would have to walk all the way down to Patton to catch a couple, but you're within walking distance of downtown, the Montfort neighborhood. They're upgrading the sidewalks, and so it's a very similar presentation to the other 3 hotels that we've talked about in the past.
Although this one is up against 240, so it doesn't have some of the neighboring issues. I mean, it's up against the hotel on the, get my sides right, the east side.
Yeah.
And probably soon to be 8 more hotels on the west side. A quick note, as David works through design guidelines, he knows that I hate the two-story thing, and I hate the plinth designs we keep getting.
Okay.
Plinth?
The two-story requirement before you step back is kind of pushing all designers where they have this like two-story piece, and then they have like, you know, it looks like a pedestal of plinth,
Yeah,
and then you set the column on top of it.
yeah.
And all the designs look the same, and like, so there's always like this building and then another building that's sitting on top of it.
And that whole base middle cap, so what are you suggesting, that the plinth
I want
be
good
expanded?
design, and I don't, it doesn't, you know, that's.
the two floors
that's
arbitrary?
Yeah, it's very arbitrary, and it's a design, but it's pushing them into a specific direction, so they all look like this.
And are they
You got
stopping
this
at-
base, and then you stick a building on top of it. And I want an actual building that comes down to the ground.
Isn't there another setback or step back at 5 or 6 floors?
It can be for 75% of the way. There's a, it's, I don't know, the language is all weird. That's a response, but it's not the only response. And, you know, when you look at urban design, the facades matter, and like that arbitrary setback, and it forces them, or they're all taking it to be, that I designed this bottom two-story piece in one way, and then I designed the rest of the building in another way. I'm just not a fan. If you think about the really good buildings that we have downtown, or a lot of the older buildings, or even the Art Deco building, you don't get that, right? You can't do the S&W that way. You can't, the Jackson building is not that way. This building is not really that way. I mean, it's got a base middle cap, but it doesn't have a, you know, two-story thing and then another building sitting on top of it. Anyway, I don't know how to fix that language, but I know I don't like what I'm getting out of it. And that's a policy thing, not, well, it's partly about this, and we talked about this with them, that I either wanted that piece to be more different or more like the building, but that's going into design guidelines
I think
stuff.
part of this too is also they're trying to orient to the road in a way that's sort of offset from the orientation of the rest of, because the road curves, it's like the building is lined up with sort of the sort of invisible wall that would connect to the next hotel. And, but that front base is aligned with the roadway, and that just kind of feels, it feels like like a toddler didn't stack their toys very well or something.
And so, I mean, you talked about multimodal, there's no real livability type thing because it's a hotel. There's some spaces that we don't even know if the public gets to use yet.
Correct.
Urban design, we talked about that a little bit. Sustainability, I missed the green roof. Steven's gonna kill me. Similar to our discussion last time, is that for whatever reason, when we did the developer is not required to tell us what they're doing regarding the checklist,
They're not required?
the benefits. No,
Yeah.
it's not until CO that they have to provide what they're going for public benefits.
See, and I don't think it was supposed to be that way. We were supposed to hear at application period, and this came up recently because we were asking.
We talked about this
Yeah.
just on the last one. And so, so we have no idea, you know, what the applicant will do, or even, and it's not that they have to do, like if they said, okay, we're gonna do housing and we're gonna do public art or whatever, but then for whatever reason it didn't work and they had to change, they would have that option. We always have that option. But I think they should,
Yeah.
Honestly,
I think they should be showing their cards.
I think one of these applicants is at some point probably going to try to pull the trick of, well, we got the entitlement and we demand the CO without that. I mean, and they might.
No, we would shut them down, but there's still a condition to,
They're conditioned.
That doesn't mean that they would.
and they would be out of compliance with their zoning. They could be shut down, but I think that they should have to say it at the application. And what I worry about is that, you know, when we first decided to have those two funds that you could contribute to, I right away said, who's going to suggest which fund? Is this going to be their opinion, a staff opinion? What's going to implement, you know, what's going to
which one's short this one?
Right, and is this gonna be like a thing? So we want them to, I think they should have to do it right at the beginning of the
Well,
application.
and one of the problems that I have, and this is not this is not this application, I'm thinking more policy, is that what I keep seeing is a pay-to-play instead of incorporating things into the design. So they're precluding things like working art into the design or working environmental, better environmental, green roofs, higher thermal insulation, net zero kind of strategies. They're just moving that off the table, and then they're gonna, buy their indulgences at the end. And I want it worked into the project from the beginning and push them into, I'm not seeing very many people go for green design, sustainable design.
Right.
As part of the hotel. And I don't know how to encourage that other than to kind of request that they do some stuff up front. Because honestly, I think it would be good design, it would be a benefit to them, it would be a benefit to the city going forward, and I'd like to see that earlier in the process instead of, oh yeah, we need this to get the CO, somebody write a check.
There's a lot of merit to that for a lot of reasons. One, you can go to any one of these hotel websites and they have very strong sustainability statements, and they brag about the hotels that they build that are green. And I'm sorry about using that word. And I think if we could get one, we could start them competing against each other.
Agreed.
Because people come to Asheville and they have that direction in their life, and that could be a decision point with a lot of people's decisions about where to stay. If you have 22 hotels and you care about sustainability, you would choose the one that's LEED Gold, or at least that would factor into the decision. And I applaud that approach, and I agree.
Okay.
I would think that building features would be easier to finance than just like a cut-the-check kind of thing, and so that you'd be more likely to get the things that would be financeable rather than.
There's a fear. It's interesting because all of these hotel developers, like you say, you go to Nashville, you go to Charleston, you go to Chattanooga, just here in the South and the Sun Belt, and they all, Marriott, I guarantee you, has green roofs and green walls and stormwater recapture and gray water systems and all kinds of stuff in different locations. But this is operator driven more than it is brand driven. And we need the operators to see that it's not more expensive to actually, there's worries in the operation side of things, is my gut feel. My gut feel. So, I don't claim to understand the hotel business, but that's something I don't know. I don't know how to rework the wording so that we can kind of push for some of this stuff up front. But I know staff has no ability to ask for this stuff.
When do we see a revisit of the hotel overlay? We were gonna do it every 6 months for us, probably coming up on a year. So maybe it's coming up soon, I'm taking notes. But, I mean, it won't be until Carter Street has like 50 hotels. We can.
Especially if we're gonna update it, they'll be like, oh.
Can they build on top of each other? Are they gonna start doing that?
We're just gonna do this again next month, right? Yep.
Is there another one right behind it? This is number 6 or number 7?
I didn't know that.
It's because they're all feeling like the same hotel. I'm getting lost in which one we're talking about. We need to start saying names or something.
Anyway, yeah. So sooner rather than later, because this stuff really.
But they've already applied. They've already had a TRC meeting. They're not going to change.
Oh, this one, yeah, this one's out the door.
Even the next one. I mean, we got to get them ahead of that.
But it's something I'd like to fix going forward. Do we have any other questions for Clay regarding specifics on this application? So we've talked about urban design, sustainability, balance of uses, public safety will be what it'll be. It's not up to keep pedestrian street. This is kind of where we're pushing people, I think, in terms of, this is the outcome of our downtown master plan. It's pushing developers to do in the hotel overlay district. This is where land is the most economically feasible for them to buy multiple lot, or the size of lots that they need to make a hotel work. So
is someone trying to buy a for a hotel too? Does anybody know? right in the middle. I hate to see how they're all designing around it, and like blocking it, when it probably is just, at some point, at some number, they'll say yes to.
And then stormwater, obviously, is an issue
Let's
coming
just put a
forward.
lake at the bottom of Carter Street. It's getting ridiculous, y'all. I know this is the point, to give them all one district, but
And this will probably be the only time that this comes before us here, correct? It'll come back to DRC, but this is our shot. So
Okay.
from a policy perspective, I'm worried about our design policy that's pushing us towards this, I got a two-story thing, and then they stick the building on top of it. I don't like the way that, they all just look the same. Even the good ones look different.
Have there been neighborhood meetings, and have we heard feedback from those? Apologies if I've missed that, but there are
They've
quite a
all-
few very small businesses.
They're all required to have neighborhood meetings.
Right.
They've all had those. I don't know if this one has yet.
has.
It probably has, and, I think honestly,
At some point, we're gonna have a neighborhood meeting where every
Everyone's a
other
hotel.
contact
Is
for
a
the
hotel.
neighborhood is another hotel. Like, that is gonna happen, and who's gonna go to that meeting? The other hotel owners, which are actually the same hotel owner, like, what? There are absurdities afoot.
I believe this one, given where it's located, it actually resulted in notification across the highway to some folks. And I think a couple of people showed up from Montfort.
okay.
All right, well, I wanna go to the neighborhood meeting where it's all the hotel owners at the hotel development. Yeah, I wanna be there.
Them and Echo Mountain.
Yeah.
Echo Mountain's like,
Well, but this commission still will, the feedback that provided today will go back to the applicant. So let's encourage, I'll personally encourage green roof being looked at.
yes.
I'd like to hear more information on whether or not the rooftop bar will be accessible to the public, if the restaurant will be accessible to the public, alongside my strong encouragement that both are. Design-wise, y'all will get on them.
Yeah, we'll stay on the
And we'd
design.
like to know what community benefits they've chosen and how they scored. I don't think that we should have to wait till the CO for that.
Again, really appreciate the site-specific stuff that we get to talk about, but, part of that impacts matrix are we looking at are we getting a mix of uses with respect to culturally? There's a lot of no's that I can offer without, even going out very far on a limb at all about this. And so, there's a difference between planning and the site review, and we're stuck in conflict between these two things.
Somewhat. I'm concerned that we're getting, so I'm thinking of, I can't remember if it's the Tempo or the Tribute, that, they had really small little things on the backside of their plans, on the Carter or Ann, I can't remember now. The little retail spaces.
Yeah, that was the Tribute, and you're right, it was a separate leasable areas on Ann
It's like
Street.
1,500 square feet or something like that.
Yeah.
Real small little spaces that, I know enough about things to know that, like, they're not gonna get any money for it because there's no way they can build that inexpensively enough. And who's gonna rent a 1,500 square foot space up there at $35, $40 a foot? Maybe, it's just, that's the level of finish that they're having to put in to put it there. But my goodness, anyway, I'm concerned, are we getting the right mixes? Are we getting the right sizes for people to actually use? There's not a restaurant moving into a 1,500 square foot space. There's not gonna be an independent restaurant moving into the lobby or running the bar for a Marriott. It's gonna be run by the hotel. So it's involving the public, and so is there a public, benefit to that, right? Yeah, okay, I can go eat there, but it's not like Barley's is setting up there.
Wait, is the restaurant connected to the hotel and not a separate?
I don't know.
We don't know yet. That plan showed up yesterday, basically, or a few days ago with the new
It has to
computers.
be 50% activated with private space. You know what, though, we haven't detailed whether or not the back wall could be accessible to the hotel or something, But this has come up, and we actually said, does it say separate leasable space?
I don't know if
if it says leasable or private.
I don't think it says leasable.
It might
I
say
think it's just gotta be activated, it's gotta be
activated.
something that the public can use, but I think the hotel could own it, or they could have a different shell company that
Yeah,
runs it.
I think the separate leasable space comes from when you have structured parking. Because that's, Tribute is like this, and so at the back on Ann Street, it would have been a structured parking, would have been fronting the street, and so they have to, I think that's where that provision comes from. But we,
Because of the, let's say I'm going to use as an example Hyatt, they put a pool on the bottom floor, and then they carve the windows, and no one goes in that building. So we were saying, you know, you're basically extracting the parcel from the public, and we'd like to have the public on the bottom floor. You can be whatever you want, but
right.
that's the point.
We
So if it
wouldn't-
is a restaurant, it has to be open to the public. But
We wouldn't be able to
language should be clear.
define the user. I don't think it says private. You know what I mean?
But they should be able to make it private.
And I think this is what the Design Review Commission was talking, that this area naturally lends itself to some kind of separate entrance that would be, you know, indicating to the public, hey, yeah, it's in the bottom of a hotel, but this is a public restaurant. We'd love to have you come and, you know, be here.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know that our policies are getting us, I don't know that the wording is quite right to get us exactly what we're looking for.
Right. But
And I'm
definitely,
not trying to hurt the hotel guys either. I mean, they're trying to make a living and run a business, you know, and forcing them to give their entire first floor to, you know, retail,
Some
office,
yeah.
restaurant is ridiculous. Obviously, we shouldn't do that, but there's something, I'd like to get something a little bit better than what we're getting.
6 hotels, how many hundreds of employees is that?
Oh, my goodness.
How many of those employees are gonna be paid enough to afford market rate housing?
Well, you'd know if you had the community benefits table.
I'm just saying that when you look at this in context, and let's say, how many affordable housing units did we add, and how many did we just create demand from these really low-paying jobs? Did you know that North Carolina is ranked 50th in the country for pay in hospitality and lodging industry? At 50th. Our hospitality and waging workers have the lowest pay of any state on average. Asheville's probably a little bit higher than the rest of the state average, but that's where we're at. And that there's, in the larger context of what are other pressures and on growth are we going to experience from seeing one industry that notoriously pays very low, copy and paste projects again and again and again, and the other public costs that you can't see in a proposal like this keep stacking up. So this is a big macro argument I'm making about maybe why our land use policies in general need to be more sustainable.
We need to move on in the discussion. Any closing? Do you have any questions for us?
I don't think so. I appreciate this process that we've established, because I'm certainly going to reduce my notes into recommendations in the TRC report, and that will carry it all the way through every single board. So this is really I like hearing these policy issues before we get to the plan review, so that I have no problem putting it in the applicant's mind that, hey, these boards are talking about these issues, and you need to start addressing them. Yeah, we'll talk about what percentage of fenestration you have, but you need to think about this stuff. So I do appreciate that process.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
I lost them.
We're good. He's right. 49.
49.
We moved up. Yeah, we're beating Arkansas
It
now.
was because of Carter Street.
We're beating Arkansas.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Yeah, ziprecruiter.com.
So our next item, and I'm going to try to fly through these remaining items to be somewhat respectful of your time since I'm 30 minutes over, is I'm talking about the recommendation. So I have till the end of the month to recommend an appointment for towel seat, basically. And so there's a number of things going on in my head as I'm looking at this. One, we're going to lose Andrew into this year.
6 years already?
And Stephen Lee,
That's
I
why you
think.
wanted on P&Z.
Did I do that right? Can you look that one up?
That might be right. Let's
What am I
double check.
going to do with everything I learned here?
So we've got a number of applications. We're going to get more applications coming in, but I'm thinking about not only this seat, but the next seats, and like trying to but like what voices, constituencies, things like that.
That's correct. with Stephen Lee.
Yeah, so both Andrew and Stephen Lee rotate off this December.
Wow.
Yeah, Stephen Lee's, those are two big
Yeah.
voices that we're going to lose.
Wow.
And so I'm trying to think of, so we had a number of applications with urban planners and people like that, but I'm thinking I'm going to think about those people more for Stephen Lee's seat. Does that make sense? They don't, forgive me, the applicants that we've received so far are qualified, interesting people, but they're not Stephen Lee. That's a big shoe to fill.
Can we
don't.
violate our term limits? And if we
he-
can't
he
think of
would-
anyone else to fill it, can people just stay indefinitely? I saw that in another committee.
Yeah, we just did
I
that.
can't think of anyone.
We just did that in Public Art and Cultural.
Um,
Taylor's like, no, y'all drive me crazy.
So of the applications that I have right now, I mean, we've got Billy Cooney, Ben Gladstone, both urban planners that could probably, fill that seat. I feel like we've got plenty of architects, but, we've got a really good application from Chad Robertson with Clark Nexon, who's obviously a much better architect than I am, and would be interesting to, but I don't know that we need Chad right now with both, with Robin and Ricardo and myself on right now. That's not a voice that that's lacking in the conversation. We've got a couple of developers on there, but okay. And we've got two different realtors, and then we've got Hayden and we've got Christina. The one that was really interesting to me for tall seat, so there's two people I'm really considering for tall seat right now. So for Andrew's seat and the current applications, I think we might receive some more, but Stu Helms has applied.
Interesting.
And it's an interesting, but it's a kind of that side of things. So I was thinking, like, when we get to Andrew's seat, I was thinking someone in that realm would be kind of interesting. Younger, kind of has that. He's on that side of kind of your side of the fence for something like that. For tall seat, we got a really neat application from, if I can find him, Jefferson Ellison.
What?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. That's
So
so neat.
So for me, it was Jefferson or it was Clarissa Zach.
The chief of police's wife?
Yeah. So it's like, do we go with Jefferson because he would represent a voice that we haven't had since we've lost Kimmy,
I would love to have Jefferson on this.
or Clarissa, who would probably, she's real estate and also very, very strong public safety. So those are the two things. So I'm not actually basically when I make my recommendation, what I was planning on doing was saying those are the two names that I would ask council to consider. If council is looking more for a public safety kind of voice, which Tal was, then maybe they would go with Clarissa. But Jefferson represents a constituency that is.
And he's like 20-something.
That's awesome.
He just opened an office on the block, so he's very involved with the Block Collaborative now, and obviously the city's going to be working really closely with them over the next few years.
I'll be voting for him.
Honestly, I think, so much of the day-to-day work of like the committees and things like that doesn't just require, grievances about big problems like public safety.
Right.
It requires get your hands dirty on some really complicated things involving placemaking and other stuff like that. And so I think it's relatively easy to get feedback about problems. It's harder to find skill sets that are actually ready to go to work in things. And so that's those skill sets, I think. I expect to hear, it's tough when you got skills in the gallery but you only hear problems in the gallery. It's easier when you have skills up here and you get the feedback on the problems from the gallery. And so that's what I'd be looking for. And so there's people with like placemaking skill, urban planning, stuff like that.
And an ability to bring people together.
Right.
talk about things.
Right.
Anyway, that's, unless y'all have like a different take on that, that was gonna be kind of how I made my recommendations.
What did
based on
Stu's
where we're at.
application have to say? What was his impetus?
Can it be read aloud?
Um,
I mean, I don't know that I saw.
I
him.
don't-
welcome to share
I don't
them.
think so, yeah, I
And we're
can share
probably
those.
running way over time here.
We are running way over time, but we're gonna fly through the updates, if that's okay. His application, and I can share these, you know, basically, he's interested from his perspective as leading tours, and how the hospitality industry interfaces with, lived in Asheville for 18 years, spent the majority of my time downtown working, enjoying the benefits. As a food tour guide, I spent a great deal of time walking in and around downtown Asheville, getting to know the business owners, the workers, and the visitors. And as a food writer, you know, he's in that, so he basically just wants to be,
It's arts and culture too. To
yeah,
your point about Andrew's seat, yeah.
I know.
And he's
Anyway.
pretty vocal and, you know, I think that it's a good fit
He
too.
might be more fun at meetings than me.
Jefferson too.
Yeah, Jefferson too.
Anyway.
It's about to get interesting. We're gonna see
so,
some
yeah.
infighting.
Yeah, so that's,
Okay, so we need to replace 3 seats?
we need to replace one seat right now.
Okay.
And then in December, there'll be 2 more seats come available, and then we'll go through that.
And one seat right now is the vacant seat, not
The
necessarily
one
one of
seat-
these to have.
That's
Okay.
correct, that's correct. Tile seat's vacant, and I need someone, and I'm thinking,
So Jefferson?
I'm gonna recommend Jefferson for general purposes, Clarissa, if council wants to do something.
And when does this
for
come to
public
us?
safety.
Tuesday?
October 10th.
October 10th, okay. I'm going to encourage you to say Jefferson, and I'll talk to Clarissa.
It is what it is. Okay, let's move into updates and reports. Stephen Lee Johnson was barely here for the meeting yesterday, and we voted to, with conditions for an approval for the landscape and fencing for 22 and 27 Church Street for the United Methodist Church. We had an informal review for the project that we just saw, and I don't think we met since our last meeting, so I think that's the only DRC we've had since DTC has met. Asheville Downtown Association?
The next Building Our City Speakers Series is on October 3rd from 5:30 to 7 p.m. That's Eve Picker. And Oktoberfest is October 7th from 2 to 6. So get your tickets for that.
Tell us about Eve Picker. What is, oh, no, just general, what about housing,
Housing.
downtown
It's all housing.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
City council, is
Sorry,
that me?
I
No, that's Dana.
I
Okay.
go to all those.
Yeah, homeless initiatives is in the downtown update reports, general downtown updates. Yeah.
I do have some, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. We're almost there, y'all. Thank you for coming today, even though we didn't have a forum, and
Aaron's
sticking with us
texting
to
me
the
about
end.
the bike lane thing, the fire thing.
Okay, good morning.
Good
Dana
morning.
Frankel with the Planning Department. Just want to highlight a few updates for you all today, and specifically starting with some aspects of cleanliness and safety. I want to note that moving forward, we intend to have a representative from the city manager's office attend and provide updates every other month on cleanliness and safety, so look for that next month. I don't have specific updates from APD in terms of coverage today, but they do continue to prioritize public safety presence downtown, and I expect us to have more updates on their level of service soon. The Community Responder Program, as a reminder, that's continuing 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's with our firefighters. They are out within the downtown, but also across the city. And staff is working on finalizing a plan that details resources needed to continue this indefinitely. So there's no end date in sight, and to continue this permanently. We will see what that looks like from a resource perspective.
But you looking at 24-hour service as part of that?
Good question. I'm not sure, but I do know that an update is being provided at City Council's Environment and Safety Committee at the October 24th meeting. We're continuing to improve the way we monitor streetlight outages. We've cross-trained parking services staff to report those outages and working to get the repairs made as quickly as possible. With regards to homelessness, we have some good updates to share, and you'll find all this in your report, and this is all related to implementation of the National Alliance to End Homelessness study. Homeward Bound recently opened the Compass Point Village permanent supportive housing, which offers 85 permanent supportive housing units, so that's housing 87 people.
Apparently 60 are currently unhoused in Asheville that are going into that project.
And move-ins began this week. The Shangri-La Step Up project is another supportive permanent housing facility, and it's on track for occupancy in the first quarter of 2024. 113 units will be available through that project. Yeah, Shangri-La, early 2024, first quarter. City Council and County Commissioners recently approved $875,000 each to add 43 shelter beds this fall, based on HIAC's recommendations.
It's really 58 too, because we opened 15 before that meeting, so.
Thank you.
The study we did says we need 95, so that's 58 of the 95.
So Code Purple begins October 15th, and ABCCM and Salvation Army will be available, and more beds are going to be offered this year than last year. HIAC also has a draft governance charter, so a big part of the recommendations from the NAEH is to restructure the way we make decisions and direct resources in our community around homelessness. And so they're